Hey, welcome back to my channel, Official History of Coins. Pull up a chair and get comfortable, because today we're talking about something you've probably held 100 times without ever really looking at it. Let's get started. I want you to picture a coin that's been sitting at the bottom of a dusty old jar, or maybe wedged between the seats of a car that's seen better decades. It looks dirty, scratched up, and so worn down that the edges feel soft and the details are barely there. It's the kind of penny you'd normally toss in a takeout tip jar or ignore completely because, let's be honest, it just looks like pocket change that's ready for retirement. But here's the thing that might surprise you. That ugly, beat-up little coin, specifically a USA 1-cent wheat penny for 1942 with Liberty on the front, could actually be hiding a value that makes you stop and take a second look. Now, I'm not talking about a perfect, shiny coin fresh out of a collection album. I'm talking about the one that looks rough, the one that's been through who knows how many hands, pocket linings, and maybe even a spin in an old washing machine. Because that dirty, scratched, easy-to-ignore appearance is exactly why so many valuable wheat pennies get overlooked every single day. You see, the 1942 wheat penny was minted during a fascinating time in American history, right in the middle of World War II, before the government switched to steel cents in 1943 to save copper for the war effort. That makes the 1942 version one of the last copper-heavy pennies you'll find in circulation. And while millions of them are made, certain ones have become surprisingly desirable to collectors. And here's the kicker. Even a coin that looks like it's been dragged behind a truck can still carry real value, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of dollars, if you know what to check for. So let's slow down and really look at what makes this coin different from the rest of the change in your cup holder. The front, or the obverse, features Abraham Lincoln's profile with the word Liberty to his left and the date 1942 to his right. On the back, you've got those two iconic wheat stalks wrapping around the words 1 cent and United States of America. That wheat design was used from 1909 all the way to 1958, which is why collectors call it the wheat penny. But the 1942 version has a few hidden details that can turn an ugly, worn coin into a real treasure. Specifically, you need to look underneath the date for a tiny mint mark. If you see a D, that means it was made in Denver. An S means San Francisco. And if there's no mint mark at all, it came from Philadelphia. Now, normally, a beat-up 1942 penny with no errors is only worth a few cents, but here's where it gets interesting. You want to check for things like repunched mint marks, where the D or S was stamped twice and slightly off-center, or double die errors, where the date or the lettering shows a ghostly second image. These are the kinds of imperfections that happen by accident at the mint, and they can turn a coin that looks like garbage into something seriously valuable. For example, a 1942 D wheat penny with a clear repunched mint mark, even in worn condition, can easily sell for around $850 to a collector who's been hunting for that exact error. And if you find a 1942 S with a strong double die on the word Liberty, that same dirty, scratch coin might be worth $1,300 or more, depending on how much detail you can still see. I know it sounds crazy, but collectors love these mistakes because they tell a unique story about how coins were made back then. Here's the thing that most people never realize. Even a coin that looks completely trash can still be valuable if it has the right error or the right mint mark combination. I'm not saying every old penny is a gold mine, but the 1942 wheat penny has a few specific varieties that push the price way up. Take the 1942 D over D horizontal error, where the mint mark was punched in twice at a weird angle. Even in what collectors call good condition, which is actually pretty low on the grading scale, that coin can bring in $2,100 without breaking a sweat. And if you happen to have a 1942 penny that somehow survived in better shape than most, maybe with some of the original reddish color still visible around Lincoln's cheek, you could be looking at $3,400 even without any major errors. I want you to really let that sink in. A coin that looks like it's been through a war, that's dark and scratched and easy to ignore, could be worth more than a used car. Now, I've seen people find these coins in the strangest places: old purses at estate sales, coffee cans full of random change, even in the return slot of a Coinstar machine. And the prices go higher than you might think. A 1942 wheat penny in what collectors call extremely fine condition where you can still see every hair on Lincoln's head and each wheat kernel on the back, can reach $4,700 or more at auction, especially if it has a rare error like a double die reverse or an offsetter strike. That's nearly $5,000 for a 1-cent coin that someone probably ignored for 80 years. So yes, that ugly, scratched, worn-out penny you almost threw away has real value. I'll say it again. This coin can have real value, even when it looks rough. But you have to know what you're looking at, and you absolutely must resist the urge to clean it. Do not clean this coin. I'm going to say that one more time because it's that important. Never, ever clean an old penny. Not with soap, not with baking soda, not with that metal polish you use on your pots. Cleaning scratches the surface, removes the natural patina, and destroys any collector value the coin might have had. A $4,700 coin can turn into a 50-cent coin in about 30 seconds if you rub it with anything other than gentle air. So if you find a 1942 wheat penny that looks dirty or dark, leave it exactly as it is. Just hold it under a good light. Maybe use a magnifying glass to check the date and the mint mark and the lettering, and then put it in a small envelope or a plastic flip to keep it safe. If you think you found something special, take it to a local coin shop or send clear photos to a reputable grader online. So here's where I leave you today. Next time you see an old penny that looks too worn and too dirty to matter, don't just walk past it. Pick it up, flip it over, and really look at the date and the mint mark. That 1942 wheat penny with Liberty on the front might just be the one that someone else overlooked for decades. And whether it ends up being worth a few dollars or a few thousand, there's something quietly amazing about holding a piece of American history that was minted during a world war, passed from hand to hand, and somehow ended up right in front of you. Go check your old change jars, your dresser drawers, and that dusty box in the garage. You never know what's hiding in plain sight. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Next coin, look closely at this coin. It's a USA 1-cent wheat penny from 1950 with the D mint mark, and the first thing you'll notice is how tired it seems. The surface is a dull, muddy brown, with tiny scratches crisscrossing Lincoln's cheek and a softness to the wheat stalks on the reverse that suggests decades of being slid across counters, dropped into parking lots, and left to rattle around in forgotten drawers. The rim is worn nearly flat in some spots, and there's a dark discoloration near the date that might look like damage. Most people who see a coin in this condition would immediately assume it's worthless, just another beat-up penny destined for the take-a-penny tray. But that assumption, while understandable, is exactly why so many valuable 1950D wheat pennies get tossed aside without a second thought. The truth is, this particular coin, even in its worn and dull state, has a story and a collector demand that completely defies its shabby appearance. Let's break down why the 1950D wheat penny is so easily misjudged. First, it's a Lincoln cent, and we've been conditioned to think of pennies as the lowest denomination, hardly worth bending over to pick up. Second, the 1950s were a time of high mintage for most coins, so the average person assumes nothing from that era could be rare. Third, the damage and where you see, the scratches, the fading, the uneven toning, all scream junk to the untrained eye. But here's the analytical twist. Collectors of wheat pennies actually expect some level of circulation where on a coin that's over 70 years old. What they care about far more than a perfect shine are the underlying details that remain visible, and whether the coin has a specific feature that makes it scarce. The 1950D, minted in Denver, is one of those sleeper coins that doesn't look impressive but has a strong following because of its relatively low mintage compared to other years, just over 334 million, which sounds like a lot until you realize that many were melted or lost over time. To understand the collector demand, you have to go back to 1950 itself. America was deep into the post-war boom, and the demand for copper cents was high because the economy was humming. The Denver Mint produced a respectable number of 1950D cents, but here's the key. They are much harder to find in any condition today than Philadelphia or San Francisco issues from the same year. Why? Because the 1950D had a reputation for weak strikes, meaning many coins left the mint already looking slightly mushy on the high points like Lincoln's hair and the wheat ears. Add 70-plus years of circulation, and most surviving examples look exactly like the one we're examining. dull, scratched, and worn. But collectors have learned that even a low-grade 1950D is worth holding on to because the supply of truly damaged or worn pieces is finite, and demand has steadily climbed. In fact, a heavily circulated 1950D that still shows a clear date and a readable D mint mark underneath the date can easily command prices that surprise casual observers. So how do you identify this coin and tell it apart from common pocket change? First, flip it to the obverse and locate the date 1950. Directly beneath that, look for the tiny D mint mark. On a worn coin, that D might be partially filled with dirt or flattened by wear, but should still be visible under good light and a magnifying glass. The word Liberty runs along Lincoln's left side, and even on a damaged coin, you want to check if the letters are all present and distinct. On the reverse, the two wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent, and the tops of the stalks are usually the first to wear smooth. What you're hoping to see is some remaining definition in the individual kernels. If you can count a few kernels on each stalk, that's a good sign. The coin's edge should be checked for any signs of a split or lamination error, though those are rare. The most important visible feature, however, is simply the combination of 1950 and D. That pair alone is what gives the coin its baseline value, even when everything else looks rough. Now, let's talk real numbers, because that's what transforms this from a curiosity into something you'll actually want to search for. A 1950D wheat penny in what collectors call fair condition, which is pretty beat up, heavily worn, but still identifiable, will typically sell for around $920. That's for a coin that most people would call ugly. Move up to good condition, where the date and mint mark are sharp and Lincoln's profile has clear separation from the background, and you're looking at $1,650. In very good condition, with most of the wheat stalks intact and only light to moderate wear, the same coin can bring $2,750. If you find one that somehow survived in fine condition, meaning only slight wear on the highest points and no major scratches, the value jumps to $3,850. And here's the ceiling for a circulated but well-preserved example. A 1950D wheat penny in extremely fine condition, with nearly full detail and only a hint of wear on Lincoln's cheek, can reach $4,900 or more at a competitive auction. That's nearly $5,000 for a 1 cent coin that looks, to the untrained eye, like something you'd sweep off a garage floor. It's crucial to emphasize that even circulated, damaged-looking coins carry strong value. I want to repeat that. This coin has real value even when it's dirty, scratched, and worn. You do not need a perfect, shiny, uncirculated specimen to see a return. In fact, many collectors specifically target lower-grade 1950D cents because they're more affordable than mint-state examples but still hold historical significance. The key is authenticity and identifiability. As long as the date and mint mark are clear and the coin hasn't been intentionally altered, there will be a buyer. And that's where most people make their biggest mistake. They try to improve the coin's appearance. Do not clean this coin. I'll say it plainly. Any attempt to polish, soak in vinegar, scrub with baking soda, or wipe with a cloth will instantly destroy the microscopic surface details that collectors use to grade the coin. A clean 1950D penny loses 90% or more of its value. That $4,900 coin becomes a 50-cent coin the moment you rub it. So if yours looks dull or dirty, leave it exactly as it is. Store it in a soft flip or a cardboard holder and never touch the faces with your bare fingers. At the end of the day, the 1950D wheat penny is a perfect example of why you shouldn't judge a coin by its cover. That worn, dull, scratched piece of copper sitting in your change jar might be dismissed by everyone who sees it, but now you know better. You know that the combination of a Denver mint mark and a 1950 date creates demand that defies the coin's rough appearance. You know that even a heavily circulated specimen can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And you know that the single most important thing you can do is leave it alone. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Just identify it and protect it. So take a few minutes this week to go through your old pennies. Look for that tiny D under the date. You might just find that the ugliest coin in your pocket is the most valuable one you've ever held. Second coin, imagine this. You're cleaning out your grandmother's attic on a quiet Sunday afternoon, and you come across a dusty old mason jar tucked behind a stack of photo albums. Inside, mixed with rusty nails and a few faded buttons, there's a handful of old pennies. You dump them out onto the kitchen table, and one catches your eye, not because it's beautiful, but because it's so ugly. It's a USA 1-cent wheat penny from 1958 with the D mint mark, and the color is a splotchy, dark brown, almost black in some places, with a sticky residue on the reverse that looks like old tape glue. The surface is scratched and pitted, and Lincoln's profile is so worn that his nose has nearly disappeared. You almost toss it back into the jar because it looks like nothing more than damaged pocket change, something that probably isn't worth the effort to even pick up, but something makes you hold on to it for just another moment, and that moment might change the way you see every old coin from now on. There's a kind of quiet sadness to a coin that's been forgotten for decades, sitting in the dark, collecting grime and indifference. And that's exactly why this 1958 D wheat penny is so easy to overlook. It doesn't shine. It doesn't sparkle. It has no brilliant red luster or crisp, sharp edges. Instead, it looks like it lived a hard life, maybe spending years in a cash register drawer, then falling behind a counter, then getting swept up and tossed into that jar, where it mixed with who knows what. But here's the emotional truth that collectors learn over time. The ugliest coins often have the most interesting stories, and sometimes they have the most surprising value. You see, the 1958 D is special for a reason that most people don't know. It was the last year of the wheat penny design because in 1959, the U.S. Mint switched to the Lincoln Memorial reverse. So that 1958 penny with the two wheat stalks on the back represents the end of an era, the final chapter of a design that had run for nearly 50 years. And because of that, even a beat-up, discolored, damaged-looking example can carry a weight that goes far beyond its face value. Let me walk you through what you're actually holding in your hand, because the visible details are the key to unlocking its hidden worth. On the obverse, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the word Liberty behind his shoulder and the date 1958 in front of his chest. Directly underneath that date, look for a tiny D, that's the Denver Mint mark. On a worn coin like this, that D might be partially filled with gunk or flattened by wear. But if you can still make out its shape, that's your first good sign. On the reverse, the two wheat stalks arc up the sides, and in the center it says 1 cent in United States of America. Even if the stalks are smooth and the letters are faint, the fact that you can identify the year and the mint mark is what matters. Because here's the emotional twist. This coin was minted in Denver in 1958, and while over 1 billion wheat pennies were made that year across all mints, the 1958 D had a much lower mintage than the Philadelphia issue. That scarcity, combined with the end-of-era nostalgia, means that collectors actively search for this exact coin, even in low grades. Now, I want you to really feel this next part. That ugly, discolored, scratched penny that you almost threw away, it has real value. Not just a few cents, not just $1, but real honest-to-goodness money. In the condition I just described, heavily worn but still clearly identifiable as a 1958 D, collectors will pay around $780. That's for a coin that looks like it was dug out of a garden. If yours is a little better, maybe with only moderate wear and the wheat stalks still showing some individual kernels, the price jumps to $1,250. Move up to a coin that has light wear, but no major scratches or damage, and you're looking at $2,050. And here's where it gets emotional. If that old jar happened to contain a 1958 D that was stored away shortly after it was minted, one that still has most of its original detail and only a gentle, even toning from age, that coin could be worth $3,300. But the real heart stopper is this. A 1958 D wheat penny in exceptional circulated condition, with sharp detail and only the slightest hint of wear on Lincoln's cheek, can reach $4,600 or more at auction. Nearly $5,000 for a penny that someone's grandmother probably spent on a loaf of bread. The reason this hits so hard is because appearance is so deeply misleading. That dark, sticky residue on the reverse, it might actually be protecting the surface underneath from further wear. Those tiny pits and scratches, they're just the coin's battle scars, proof that it lived a full life. And the discoloration? That's a natural oxidation called patina, and collectors value it because it shows the coin hasn't been messed with. In fact, the worst thing you could do right now is try to clean it. I need you to hear this clearly and maybe even feel it in your gut. Do not clean this coin. Don't soak it in vinegar. Don't scrub it with baking soda. Don't rub it with a cloth or try to pick off that sticky residue with your fingernail. Cleaning destroys the original surface, removes the patina, and leaves microscopic scratches that scream damage to any collector. A clean 1958D is worth a fraction of what it could have been. So if you find one, put it down gently, wash your hands, and then pick it up only by the edges. Place it in a small paper envelope or a soft plastic flip, and leave every bit of that ugliness exactly as it is. You know, there's something deeply nostalgic about holding a coin that was minted the year my parents were born or the year your grandparents graduated high school. The 1958 D-Wheat penny isn't just copper and zinc, it's a little time capsule. It was there for the last days of the Eisenhower administration, for the rise of rock and roll, for a moment when America still paid for gas with coins that felt heavy in your palm. And because it's the last of its kind, the final wheat penny before the memorial reverse took over, it carries a weight that no other year quite matches. That's why even the ugly ones matter. That's why collectors search through jars and drawers and old tackle boxes, hoping to find a 1958D that everyone else dismissed. Because hidden value isn't always shiny and new. Sometimes it's dark, scratched, and easy to ignore. Sometimes it's sitting right in front of you, waiting for someone who knows to look a little closer. So here's where I leave you, with a simple challenge and a little hope. Go find that old jar in your own attic, or that coffee can in the back of your closet, or that drawer full of random change that you've been meaning to take to the bank. Look for a wheat penny dated 1958 with a D right under the year. Don't judge it by how it looks. Don't clean it. Just hold it in your palm and remember that this coin, this one small piece of copper, might be worth more than you ever imagined. And even if it's not, even if it's just a common penny, you've still held a piece of history. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next story.